The studio was buzzing with tension even before the cameras rolled. Everyone knew this wasn't going to be just another political back and forth, it was shaping up to be a collision. When the red light blinked on, Trump leaned into the microphone with his usual confidence, but his voice carried a nervous edge. "Look," he began, "nobody has done more for America than me. I made this country great again, stronger, wealthier, more respected, people know it." His hands chopped the air, his face flushed, and yet the words didn't land with their usual force. Denzel Washington, seated across from him, didn't move at first. He let the silence hang, the audience shifting in their seats, waiting. Then, in a calm but cutting tone, he broke through the noise. "Mr. Trump, you're not fooling anyone anymore. Power isn't something you hoard, it's something you use for people. And right now, your power is rotting, just like the promises you never kept." The words struck hard, clean, and deliberate. The audience gasped, some clapping instinctively before realizing they were live on air. Trump's eyes narrowed, his mouth tightened. "Excuse me," he snapped. "Rotting? You're talking to the most successful president in American history." He jabbed a finger toward Denzel, but the actor leaned forward, his voice sharpening with every word. "History doesn't care about your gold letters, your bankrupt casinos, or your broken slogans. The people, your people, are moving on. They've seen behind the curtain, and what they found wasn't strength, it was weakness." The moderator tried to cut in, but it was useless, the stage had become a battlefield. Denzel's tone grew louder, infused with the anger of millions watching at home. "You've treated America like it was just another brand to slap your name on, to sell, to exploit. But America isn't a brand, it's a people. And they're telling you, enough." The words echoed through the studio, and the energy shifted instantly. This wasn't a debate anymore, it was a reckoning. Trump shifted uncomfortably in his chair, tugging at his suit jacket as if tightening it could hold his crumbling image together. His lips curled into a forced smirk. "Denzel, you're an actor. A good one, sure. But you don't understand politics the way I do. I ran the country like a business, and I ran it better than anyone else could." The tone was defensive, a man clinging to the idea of control even as it slipped through his hands. Denzel shook his head slowly, almost pitying. "That's the problem, Donald. You ran it like one of your businesses. And what happened to those? Bankrupt, gutted, leaving real people, workers, contractors, entire communities, picking up the pieces. And now? You tried the same thing with America. You used it, drained it, and left the people carrying the debt." The audience erupted with applause, some even rising to their feet. The moderator, clearly rattled, leaned into his notes but knew there was no stopping the momentum. Trump's face reddened. "Fake news," he barked, his voice cracking under the weight of his frustration. "Nobody's been cheated, nobody's been drained. That's Democrat propaganda." But Denzel's voice cut through like steel. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on Trump, his presence filling the studio. "You think shouting, 'fake news' erases the truth? It doesn't. Ask the families who lost jobs while you gave tax breaks to the rich. Ask the veterans you dismissed when they asked for better care. Ask the small town still waiting for the factories you promised would reopen." His voice rose, his cadence sharp, echoing through the room. Trump tried to interrupt, waving his hands, but the weight of Denzel's words kept the crowd glued. The cameras captured it all, Trump flustered, Denzel composed, every sentence like a hammer hitting steel. "You can spin it however you want," Denzel finished, his voice thunderous, "but your empire isn't great. It's rotten. And the American people are walking away from the wreckage." The silence after that line wasn't empty, it was electric, heavy with the recognition that something irreversible had just been said on live television. Trump leaned toward the microphone, his jaw tight, his voice carrying the edge of desperation. "You talk like you know everything, Denzel. But you don't sit in the Oval Office. You don't deal with foreign leaders, with China, with Russia, with the crises that land on that desk every single day. You act in movies. That's not the same thing as running a nation. His tone was sharp, but beneath it, a tremor betrayed his unease. Denzel didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, calm but unyielding, letting Trump's words hang in the air like smoke before clearing them away with a deep breath. You're right about one thing, Donald, I never sat behind that desk. But I don't need to. Because leadership isn't about a chair or a title. It's about character. And what America got with you wasn't leadership, it was a con. You treated the presidency like another brand deal, like another building with your name slapped on it, hollow inside. The audience gasped, some laughing nervously at the raw sting in his words. Trump raised a finger, ready to fire back, but Denzel pressed on, his tone shifting from calm to cutting. You call yourself strong, but strength isn't shouting louder than the truth. Strength isn't firing people who won't bow to you. Strength is service. Strength is sacrifice. And you wouldn't recognize either if they stared you in the face. Trump slammed his hand on the table, startling even the moderator. I made this country rich again. Jobs. The stock market. People loved me, millions still do. His voice cracked, and for a second, the veneer of confidence shattered. Denzel seized the opening. Rich? He leaned forward, eyes locked on Trump. Maybe the stock market boomed for the wealthy, but the people in Detroit, in Appalachia, in Flint, did they feel rich? Did the single mother working 3 jobs feel rich while your billionaire friends got richer? You confuse numbers with people, Donald. And that's why your power is rotting, because people see through the lies now. The camera zoomed in on Trump's face, flushed, beads of sweat forming, the smirk gone. Denzel's voice grew steady, resonant, almost sermon-like. You can't keep selling America like it's another cheap building deal. The people are moving on. They've outgrown you. The studio broke into thunderous applause, the sound drowning out Trump's attempt to interject. For the first time, he looked smaller, not because Denzel shouted him down, but because the truth did. The moderator tried to restore order, his voice shaky over the roar of applause. Gentlemen, please, let's keep this under control. But the room was already electrified, the audience buzzing, cameras locked on Trump's stiff expression and Denzel's unwavering stare. Trump leaned in, his tone darker now, almost a growl. You think you're speaking for the people? No, Denzel, you're speaking for Hollywood elites. You're their puppet. They love when you bash me because they couldn't do what I did. They couldn't win. They couldn't make America respected again. You're just playing a role they gave you. Denzel's lips curved into the faintest smirk, the kind that sliced deeper than a shout ever could. He waited for silence before answering, his voice cutting clean through the tension. Respect? Donald, respect doesn't come from fear or intimidation. Respect comes from trust. And you burned that trust every single day you sat in office. You divided families, mocked veterans, turned neighbors against each other, all to puff yourself up. That's not leadership. That's selfishness in its purest form. The audience erupted again, this time with cheers mixed with gasps, as if the words had pulled a veil back from the stage. Trump's face reddened, and he jabbed a finger across the table, his voice rising. You don't know what it's like to carry that weight. You don't know what it's like to be attacked day after day by the fake news, by traitors in Congress, by enemies abroad. Denzel interrupted sharply, his calm suddenly giving way to fire. And you don't know what it's like to put your country before yourself. The thunder in his voice silenced the room in an instant. Every eye was locked on him. You wore the presidency like a crown, but it's not a crown, it's a responsibility. A sacred one. And you betrayed it. You weren't attacked because you were strong. You were attacked because you were reckless. Because you treated America like a toy, and when it broke, you blamed everyone else. The crowd erupted in a standing ovation. Some shouted, "That's right," while others simply clapped so hard their palms stung. Trump froze in his seat, lips trembling, eyes darting, as if he couldn't find the words to claw back control. The moderator, almost whispering into his mic, said what the entire nation was thinking: "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a debate. This is a reckoning." The debate stage felt less like a political forum and more like a courtroom where the verdict was already being written in real time. Trump's jaw tightened, and he forced a laugh that sounded hollow under the weight of the silence. He tried to wave off Denzel's words, leaning on the old playbook. "He's an actor. That's what actors do, they act. They deliver lines, they play heroes on screen. But this is reality, folks. And in reality, I built towers, I built jobs, I rebuilt America." His voice carried, but it lacked conviction. The audience's eyes weren't on Trump's bravado, they were fixed on Denzel, who sat steady, unmoving, like a man who had been preparing for this moment his entire life. Denzel leaned forward, his tone now quieter, but so sharp it cut through the air like glass. "Donald, stop pretending this is about towers or TV ratings. People lost homes, pensions, lives, because of reckless policies you pushed and lies you sold. That's the reality. You didn't rebuild America. You hollowed it out. You turned people's pain into applause lines, and when the applause died, all that was left was ruin." Gasps echoed across the studio. One veteran in the audience stood up, saluted Denzel, and sat back down. The cameras caught it, and instantly, the moment began to trend across every social platform. The hashtag Truth Over Trump started climbing. Trump slammed his hand on the table, rattling his water glass. "I'm the only reason this country survived. Without me, America would be on its knees," he shouted, his voice cracking at the edges. Denzel didn't flinch. He stared straight into the cameras, not even giving Trump the dignity of eye contact. "America isn't on its knees, Donald. It's standing, in spite of you." The words fell like a hammer, each syllable deliberate, undeniable. The audience exploded, half in cheers, half in stunned silence, because what had just happened was bigger than politics. It felt like history. Trump's face flushed a deep red, his hands gesturing wildly as he scrambled to reclaim the ground he had just lost. "You don't know what it takes to lead. You never had to sit in the Oval Office, making decisions that affect millions of lives. You're just a Hollywood mouthpiece, riding on fame and fortune while I carried the weight of a nation." His voice cracked again, betraying the desperation under his words. The camera cut to Denzel, who sat calm, unshaken, his eyes narrowed with the same piercing conviction that had silenced the room moments earlier. He leaned slightly forward, resting his clasped hands on the table, the picture of discipline and composure. "You carried the weight of your ego, Donald. Not this nation. You used the Oval Office like it was your personal stage, a place to demand loyalty, to inflate your brand, to cash in while the people you claimed to serve were left scraping for dignity. That's not leadership. That's exploitation." The crowd stirred. Some gasped, others applauded, but the most telling moment came from a young mother in the audience. She shouted, "My husband lost his job because of you." Her voice cracked with raw pain. Trump's head snapped toward her, his mouth opening to retort, but the room drowned him out with a wave of murmurs and shouts of agreement. Denzel's voice cut through the noise, sharp as a blade. "That's the America you left behind. Forgotten workers, broken promises, shattered trust. You brag about towers and deals, but you never lifted a hand for the people who needed you most." He paused, letting the silence after his words stretch like a taut wire. Trump tried to laugh it off, raising his voice to fill the air. "Fake news. Lies. None of this is true." But even his most loyal supporters in the crowd looked uneasy. The usual chants that followed his words never came. Instead, there was hesitation, doubt, and the unmistakable weight of truth pressing down. The moderator attempted to restore order, but it was clear, the narrative had shifted. This was no longer Trump's stage. Denzel had seized it, not with volume, but with truth, and the world was watching. The studio lights bore down, but it wasn't the heat of the bulbs that made Trump sweat, it was the silence. That heavy, suffocating silence after Denzel's words landed like a hammer. Trump's shoulders sagged for just a moment, then stiffened again as he puffed out his chest. "You think you're better than me?" he barked, pointing across the table. "You've never had millions chanting your name. You've never had the courage to take the risks I took for this country." Denzel didn't flinch. His tone was lower now, deliberate, almost surgical. "Courage? Courage isn't building an empire on bankruptcy and lies. It isn't firing off insults at soldiers' families. It isn't turning your back on the Constitution when it didn't serve your ego. Courage is facing the truth even when it costs you everything. And that's the one thing you've never been able to do." The audience erupted, half in cheers, half in stunned silence. Trump tried to talk over it, but the moderator raised his hand, giving Denzel the floor. Denzel leaned back, his voice cutting with precision. "Your power is rotting, Donald. The people see it. The lies don't land the way they used to. The fear doesn't hold the same grip. You've lost something you can't buy back with billions. You've lost trust." Trump's jaw clenched, and for the first time, his bluster seemed hollow. He tried to smirk, to toss out another insult, but the words stumbled. His eyes darted to the audience, searching for approval, but the applause was for Denzel. A camera panned across the crowd, tears in the eyes of veterans, young students leaning forward, families holding each other tighter. It wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a reckoning. And Denzel had the room in his hands. Trump gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. He finally managed to force out, "I gave these people jobs, I gave them pride. Without me, America would have collapsed." His voice cracked at the end, betraying the strain. The claim hung in the air, heavy, almost desperate. Denzel leaned forward, his eyes steady, his tone sharp enough to slice through the tension. "You didn't give them jobs, Donald. You gave them broken promises. You shut down factories, left contractors unpaid, and turned workers into pawns for your own image. Pride doesn't come from chanting your name, it comes from dignity, and you stripped that away every chance you got." The crowd gasped. Some clapped. Others shouted in agreement. Trump waved his hand, trying to drown it out. "Fake news. Lies. They love me out there, you'll see." Denzel's reply was cold, direct. "They might have loved you once. But love built on fear and false hope doesn't last. The people are moving on. They want honesty, not theatrics. And every time you open your mouth, you remind them of what they lost." Trump's face flushed red. He tried to laugh, but it came out hollow, like a man desperately holding onto a rope that was slipping fast. The camera zoomed in, capturing the sweat on his forehead, the slight tremor in his jaw. Denzel sat back, calm, almost motionless, the weight of his words still hanging in the studio like a storm cloud. The moderator, sensing the magnitude, whispered into his mic, "History may remember this night." The audience erupted again, louder this time, applause mixed with chants. The balance had shifted, and everyone knew it. Trump slammed his palm on the desk, forcing the microphones to rattle. "I built towers that touched the sky. I negotiated deals no one else could. I made America respected again." His voice was shrill, desperate, every word trembling as if he was trying to convince himself more than anyone else. Denzel leaned in, lowering his voice to a calm, commanding tone. "Those towers you brag about? They're filled with unpaid laborers' sweat and broken contracts. Those deals? They left America weaker, not stronger. Respect doesn't come from intimidation, it comes from integrity. And you, Donald, wouldn't recognize integrity if it stood right in front of you." The studio erupted, half the audience cheering, half booing. Trump's eyes darted around, searching for support, but the louder sound was the applause for Denzel. Cameras cut to the faces of veterans, workers, and students in the crowd, many nodding, some with tears in their eyes. Trump's face twisted in frustration. "You're an actor, Denzel. A performer. What do you know about running a country?" he sneered. Denzel didn't flinch. His reply was sharp: "I don't need to be a politician to know the difference between leadership and a scam. And the truth, Donald, is that your empire is rotting, your power is slipping, and the American people are already writing the final chapter of your story." The moderator looked stunned, unsure whether to intervene. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only when the audience rose to their feet, clapping, shouting, chanting Denzel's name. For the first time that night, Trump looked small, shrinking into his chair, the image of a man out of time, out of touch, and out of excuses. The tension reached its climax. Trump leaned forward, his voice cracking under the pressure. "They still love me. The polls, the rallies, the crowds, America is mine." His hands shook as he gestured wildly, trying to cling to a vision of power slipping through his fingers. Denzel, calm and steady, stood tall. He raised his hand, not in anger, but in finality. "No, Donald. America doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the people. And the people are moving on. Your power is rotting because it was never built on truth, never built on service, never built on honor. It was built on lies, and lies don't last." The words cut like a blade. Trump's face turned red, his mouth opened as if to fight back, but nothing came. The audience could feel it, the fight was over. Denzel had landed the final blow, not with rage, but with undeniable truth. Cameras zoomed in on Trump's expression, stunned, wounded, cornered. For once, the man who thrived on dominance sat in silence, staring at the floor. The crowd erupted, cheers, chants, applause filling the studio like thunder. Some shouted, "Truth wins," others, "Denzel. Denzel." The noise was deafening, unstoppable. The moderator raised his voice to close the debate, but the moment had already been sealed. Denzel's words hung in the air like a verdict. The image spread instantly across social media, clips of Trump frozen in defeat, headlines exploding, "Washington outshines Trump." As the lights dimmed, Denzel looked straight into the camera. "This isn't about me. It's about America choosing truth over lies, dignity over corruption, and people over power." It was the kind of ending that didn't just conclude a debate. It rewrote the narrative. Trump's empire may have been built on noise, but tonight it collapsed under the weight of truth. Denzel didn't just debate, he exposed. He reminded America that leadership isn't about ego, but service. And when history looks back on this moment, it won't see a clash of personalities. It will see a people reclaiming their voice.